Cross-platform games have been getting a lot of deserved hype in the past few years, so let's talk about the best free-to-play games out right now that have full cross-platform or cross-play support. Full cross-platform support in this case means PC, Xbox, and PlayStation players can all play together, and all these games also support the Switch, except for Warzone, which unfortunately does not. I'll say what's good about each of these games, what's bad about each of them, and also which ones that you should check out depending on what kind of games you're interested in. I actually had fun playing all these games, but there's only a couple that I plan to keep playing after this video. If you disagree with any of my rankings, or don't think that I gave a game a fair chance, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion. I'll mention some about how the devs monetize these games, and basically how friendly are these microtransactions, because, you know, while it's free to play, the devs do still want your money. So let's get started. In last place is Realm Royale. I actually had a lot of fun playing Realm Royale. It's a battle royale game that separates itself from other games in the genre with its class system and its sort of crafting system. There are 4 classes in the game right now, each of which come with customizable traits that make each class play a little different from each other. And these traits interact with certain abilities, weapons, etc. that you find throughout your game. It's a nice mechanic that adds a little bit of freshness to the gameplay. Additionally, I was actually a big fan of the crafting system. So basically you can destroy any unwanted loot and items for this currency that you can then use to craft items, weapons, runes, etc. at these forges, which then serve as sort of conflict hotspots for the game and drive more action. This both made the looting more rewarding because even if you found trash loot that you didn't want, you could use that loot for something, and it also brought more action to the game by creating these sort of centers for action. So why is this game last place if I have these good things to say about it? Well, the main reason is that it's basically abandoned by the devs. The last update was 5 months ago, and they stopped even adding new cosmetics, new items to the item shop. Because of that, queue times are very long, lobbies are mostly full of bots instead of real players. It's not the only battle royale game with bots, but it's particularly bad in this instance. The limited player base also means that sometimes you are effectively forced to play these limited time events when they have them, instead of being able to play the regular game. But I will say that the monetization is pretty consumer friendly. There's no gambling, there's no pay to win, and you can even earn the premium currency in-game for just logging in or doing daily quests. So if you want a fresh battle royale game, Realm Royale can be fun to check out. And I did enjoy the theme and overall mechanics of the game, but don't expect any major, or really even any minor updates for the game ever again. And be ready for some really long queues that might be slower than some other battle royale games, such as Fortnite or Warzone, that are pretty instantaneous. In second to last is Brawlhalla, which is a 2D platform fighting game. I had fun with this game too, and it's actually incredibly easy to get into. The controls and mechanics are pretty simple. So basically each character has a heavy and light attack. Each legend has 2 different weapons they can pick up that change their attack abilities. And as with all other fighting games, there are some combos and counters and dodging and stuff that you can do as well. The game has a couple different game modes, such as a free-for-all, 1 vs 1, both casual and ranked, and it also allows you to online queue with your friends or play locally. It's also had a couple somewhat big crossover events, such as the current Ben 10 event, or the ability to play as Rayman as a legend. But overall, the game felt pretty shallow to me. Honestly, to me, it just felt like a watered-down and simplified version of Smash. Of course, it's not really a fair comparison because Smash isn't free to play and it's certainly not cross-platform. But it was hard to get drawn into a game that just feels like a worse version of the game that I've played a lot in the past. And while each legend gets 2 different weapons they can use, there's only 12 weapons total in Brawlhalla. This does make the game easier to learn and pick up, but it also makes the game lack the depth of other fighting games or other games in this list. Along those same lines, there are limited controls, and it lacks the complex moves or combos that you see in other fighting games. In terms of monetization, Brawlhalla is pretty standard. The microtransactions are mostly for cosmetics via specific purchases, pseudo-gambling, or a battle pass. However, if you want all the characters in the game, you have to pay real money or take a long time to grind them all out, which is true for a couple other games on this list as well. So should you play it? Well, it's the only fighting game on this list, so if you want to play a fighting game, be sure to check it out. It is fun to play and it's super easy to get into. The matches are also pretty short, so it can be a great game to drop in and play for a brief moment. But just be mindful that it lacks the depth of gameplay compared to other fighting games and compared to other games on this list, which is why I ranked it so lowly. Up next is Call of Duty Warzone. There's also a paid portion of the new Call of Duty, but Warzone is free and comes with a Battle Royale mode and a couple other game modes as well. It feels very familiar if you've ever played a Call of Duty game, and it has a couple nice elements to freshen up the Battle Royale genre, such as fights in the gulag after you die that let you return to the match if you win. Basically, a respawn mechanic even for solo matches. There are also these bounties that you can pick up during a match that give you some extra cash or weapons that serve as a way to increase action in the gameplay, because these bounties are basically sort of missions where you can either hunt down another player or sort of have to defend a certain hotspot. The other game modes include a realism variant of the Battle Royale, a large team deathmatch, and a plunder mode where the goal is to reach a certain amount of cash. There are also some customizable loadouts in the game that you can find sometimes during your matches, which basically serve as an equivalent of classes, which is a nice feature. It's It's a fun game, and it really scratches that Call of Duty itch, but as someone who isn't the biggest fan of that sort of pseudo-realism type of game, and someone who got bored of Call of Duty years ago, it didn't really keep my interest. Additionally, while I think the bounty mechanic was cool for creating more conflict, adding more action to the game, it also led to a lot of camping, which I found to be pretty boring. And there are some non-gameplay related things about Warzone that are also annoying. It's not really well optimized, and the graphic settings are also a little weird, and it gave my game the sort of strange, hazy look at first, and it has more hackers than I've seen in other games. It also has, frankly, a disrespectfully large file size, with the base game being 100 gigabytes on PC, and the recent Season 4 updates being 50 gigs, and there was another 30 gigabyte update a couple days ago. It's also the only game on this list that's not available for Switch, so if you're a Switch-only player, you can't check it out. In terms of microtransactions, it's pretty standard for free-to-play games as well. There's a battle pass, some cosmetic skins, and they really push you to upgrade to the full version of Modern Warfare. It also has a debatable soft pay to win, because paying money can allow you to unlock weapons and modifications more quickly. You can also unlock them just by playing the game. So if you want a Call of Duty game or Battle Royale game with more realism, you should check it out, because it is fun to play. Of course, if you do want a new Call of Duty game, you've probably already tried Warzone, but in my opinion, it's a little late to add a new Battle Royale game that only has a few improvements on the standard genre and a couple of steps back. Frankly, it didn't hold my interest, but it can be a great game for you if it's your playstyle and preferences, even if not so much for me. In the middle of my rankings is Smite, which is a third-person MOBA game where you play as different gods from various mythologies. It's also the first game on my list so far that I actually plan on playing again in the future. I won't compare Smite too much to other MOBAs, but if you've never played any MOBA games, these games are known for their deep gameplay, strategy, and steep learning curves. In Smite, you control a god that has different abilities that you can use, and there are different items you can buy to improve them in various ways. Each team will spawn minions, and the traditional MOBA map called Conquest in Smite has 3 lanes for these minions to fight on, and your goal is to destroy the enemy base. While playing Smite, I decided to look up video guides, which is the only game on this list that I felt the need to do that for. This is, again, because the gameplay is so rich and detailed that it just takes a really long time to really understand what's going on in the game. There are 110 gods that you can play as in Smite, so there are just a lot of characters to learn, tons of items to buy during each game, and many game mechanics that can feel intimidating for new players. However, I will say Smite actually also has some more noob-friendly modes that are pretty good, that have simplified mechanics and make it much easier to learn. For example, there's Arena mode, which basically strips away a lot of the more complicated mechanics and just gives you a huge brawl fight. The game also matches you with bots for your first matches, so you can learn the ropes, although it actually doesn't explicitly tell you that it's doing that, so you can think you're playing against real players, but they're actually just bots at first. And there are also some options to have the game automatically create your build for you by buying items for you and leveling up your skills that are helpful when you're first learning the game. I've been having a really great time playing it, but I still lack a lot of the intuitive strategy or direction about what to do in this game compared to other games. Obviously, if you're not as new to MOBA games, this won't be as big of a problem for you. In terms of microtransactions, Smite's pretty standard for free-to-play games and similar to Brawlhalla. Most purchases are cosmetic, with there being a battle pass, pseudo-gambling, and direct purchasing of specific skins. However, if you want to be able to play as all the gods, you either need to grind them out over a very long period of time or buy them with real-world cash. So is Smite worth playing? It's really the only MOBA game on consoles right now, let alone one with crossplay. It has an insane amount of depth to it. If you want to gain more knowledge and strategy rewards you, in addition to having action-filled combat, you should definitely check it out. But it also has by far the largest learning curve of any game on this list, so it really takes more of a commitment to get into. As I've said, I will keep playing this game in the future, but it hasn't quite hooked me in the same way other games higher on this list have, but perhaps it's only a matter of time. In third place is Paladins, which is a class-based FPS game where you can play as 45 different champions, each with their own abilities and playstyles. The easiest way to describe Paladins is as sort of a knockoff Overwatch, but that description really does a disservice to Paladins. Unlike Overwatch or other games in the genre, Paladins allows for customization within each class. This comes in the form of talents, which modify certain abilities or give champions certain passive buffs. It also comes in the form of a customizable card deck for each champion that buffs their abilities or passives in different ways. And finally, you can buy different items within each match to respond to how the game is playing out, a similar mechanic to MOBA games. I've been having a lot of fun playing Paladins. It's become my go-to FPS game for the past few weeks. I think the champions generally have a good amount of variety to them, and the customization of each champion adds a lot more depth to the gameplay that I've enjoyed. However, it's also missing some elements that other games in the genre have. For example, there's no kill cam and there's no play of the game. While these are both in the game at some point, they decided to remove both of them for performance reasons. There are also a small number of skins or cosmetics that are slightly off-putting design choices, I'll say. And while there are a lot of heroes to play as, it's hard to balance so many, and a couple of the champions feel useless or severely underpowered. It also suffers from slightly more bugs than you would expect from this type of game. Although they were rarely game-breaking, it could definitely benefit from a little bit more polish. In terms of microtransactions, it's similar to Smite or Brawlhalla. You mostly pay for cosmetics via a battle pass, direct purchase, or again pseudo gambling. And while you can grind out each champion in the game, you can also unlock them all using real money. So Paladins is definitely worth checking out if you want a fun, team-based FPS game, or if you're looking for an Overwatch alternative. I've been playing it every day pretty consistently since I started, and I plan to keep playing it a lot in the coming months, so be on the lookout for a more in-depth review in the future. In second place is Dauntless, which is a co-op Monster Hunter style game. Dauntless has a fun, simple, and strips down gameplay loop. It's basically just boss fights and RPG elements, though they've added a couple more features recently. You fight behemoths, or monsters that have different abilities and attacks, and you use the loot from each of these fights to level up your gear in town so you can fight harder behemoths, get better loot, and so on. There are 7 different weapons that you can use, which effectively function as 7 different classes, and they each feel distinct from each other and are enjoyable to play with or experiment with. I also did a longer review of Dauntless a couple months ago, which I will link if you're interested in checking that out. As a whole, I found this gameplay loop satisfying, and the most recent update actually addressed a few of my criticisms of the game by improving the lore and adding a training camp. But the game still isn't for everyone. At its core, it's a simple gameplay loop that some might find boring, repetitive, or grindy. I also think the endgame could benefit from a few more behemoths. The hunts are also limited to 4 players, though they've teased some larger game modes for the future. It also has maybe the least consumer-friendly microtransactions of all the games on this list. Don't get me wrong, the microtransactions are really not that bad, but it does have a touch of pay to win by reducing grind. You certainly don't need to buy anything, but it's a game where spending a little bit of money will give you an advantage in regards to leveling up. So is Dauntless worth playing? It's a great game if you're looking for a fun RPG boss fighting game or a free Monster Hunter alternative. It has a straightforward gameplay loop that can be great and fun if you just want to fight monsters and gear up, but it can be boring or repetitive if you're looking for more variety in your gameplay. In first place is Fortnite. It's actually not the game on this list that I'm playing the most right now, but I feel obligated to put it in first place because of the sheer amount of time that I've sunk into this game over the past year and a half. If you somehow don't know, Fortnite is an FPS Battle Royale game that is the highest grossing game over the past 2 years, and probably will be this year as well. What immediately makes Fortnite's gameplay different than any other FPS game is the ability to build. You can instantly build walls, ramps, etc. in order to move around or defend yourself. Obviously, not everyone is a fan of this mechanic, but I truly admire Fortnite for creating probably the most unique mechanical addition to FPS games in the past few years, and with this building puts a new skill to master and a new way to play the game. Outside of that, Fortnite receives incredibly frequent updates and large changes to the game that keep it fresh. This can be frustrating if you're into super competitive games because the balance is often out of whack, but it can be super fun for casual players because there's always something new to try out or some new limited time game mode to play. They also occasionally have these massive game-changing events, such as the Black Hole event that was so impactful that it made some local news stations. Along those same lines, you really have to admire Epic's ability to collaborate. There were some special Star Wars events, and you can play as certain Marvel and DC heroes, and there were some virtual concerts with Marshmello and Travis Scott, for example, which drew some people into the game that never would have touched Fortnite otherwise. Also, on a smaller note, but very important to some people, it's the only game on this list that allows crossplay with mobile devices as well. Additionally, Fortnite's microtransactions are actually surprisingly consumer-friendly. They're probably the most consumer-friendly of all the games on this list. There's no gambling, there's no pay to win, there's not even a soft pay to win via grind reduction. I talked about this more in another video that I did a little while ago that I'll link as well if you're interested. Still, there are obviously some things that make Fortnite not for everyone. If you hate the building mechanic, it won't be the best game for you. It's also geared towards kids, which can be off-putting to some people, and the balance is often out of whack because of the frequent large and game-changing updates. In fact, I quit playing the game for a whole season because I hated some things that they added to the game. But as a whole, there's a reason that Fortnite is so popular, and it's hard to find a game that has more frequent large updates, or a game that has changed the FPS formula as much as Fortnite has with its building mechanic. At this point, you probably heard of Fortnite, you probably know whether you like it or not, but if you haven't checked it out, it's definitely worth it. So what do you guys think? What's your favorite free-to-play cross-platform game? Let me know in the comments, and please like this video to help me out if you found it enjoyable or helpful. I'll link some other videos of mine in the description as well. And yeah, thanks for watching.